So delighted to see you all. My name's Berish Bilander. I'm the CEO of Green Music Australia. Today, we're doing an online launch and webinar for our New South Wales Venue Sustainability Health Check Report, which is a really exciting initiative that we launched in person at the Regional Remote Music Summit a couple of weeks back. But now we're delighted to do it for those that weren't able to be in person for that event. Um, Before I crack on, I think it's really important that we acknowledge that all the work we're doing to tackle climate change and to reckon with our history, really, that has led us to this point, is to acknowledge First Nations people who have been caring for the country for eons, generations, thousands of generations, and really do have the knowledge and traditional wisdom to help guide us back.
She won't mind me.
Well, Ray, can you just put yourself on mute? That's cool. Do that for us. Thanks.
Throw out.
Yeah, so I was just saying, honouring First Nations elders, past and present, who who really their connection with country is a guiding light for us and something that we take very seriously here at Green Music. Always trying to insert that wisdom into the programs we run, listen to their voices, elevate their voices. And I am calling in specifically from Naarm on Wurundjeri country, so paying my respects to those elders. Uh, Green Music is a charity that works at the intersection of climate and music, unsurprisingly, where where we occupy this unique space. We're the only national charity that is doing work on environment and music. And this, I think it's really important that we talk about that there's lots of wonderful charities existing in this space, and we play a very particular role because we have these two pillars that we work from. One is helping the music scene reduce its environmental impact, and we've been doing that for over 12 years now. And another part is building the cultural power of the music scene and harnessing that power to actually talk about what has become the biggest issue of our times. It's sort of all other issues in some way intersect with climate change and our capacity as a species to change the trajectory we're on. So yeah, we occupy a unique role, and we're delighted to be in this space and be supported by various government agencies and philanthropists and others. The programs I'm talking today have Lockdown New South Wales. They're our primary supporter for this program, and then we've also got support from Creative Australia and Music Australia in core funding. As I mentioned, we run a range of programs. Some are more advocacy based, like No Music on a Dead Planet, which we had quite a large presence in the lead up to the last federal election, getting artists to sing up and talk about the need for stronger environmental action, through to Camping Buddy, like an app we're designing for music fans to plan better in the lead up to a festival. We run a bunch of alliances like Party with the Planet, bringing festivals together, Music Product Stewardship Alliance, bringing record labels, retailers, wholesalers, distributors together. But today we're going to focus on the Green Venue program, which is what uh, was was the program we ran that preceded and enabled us to get this report off the ground. Uh, so the Green Venue program. It's the first thing we did when we ran this program was have chats to have the various people that we are, the various stakeholders in venues around the country, and particularly New South Wales. And we realized there was a knowledge gap that we needed to work on. So we went about developing a green venue guide, which is now a free downloadable resource. I'll provide a QR code towards the end of this chat. And it covers things like energy use, waste, transport, ops and governance, First Nations, embedding cultural thinking. Uh, and and we were chapter by chapter, there's checklists and there's a whole lot of packed full of information to really help venues make changes on a practical level. The second part of what we did was run venue workshops. So my colleague on the right hand side, uh, and we toured 6 venues across New South Wales from Byron Shire down to Wollongong, 4, I think, regional places and 2 in the city of Sydney. And we really wanted that to be a gathering so that we could bring together venue staff, musicians and others interested in the how venues can green themselves. And and we had like a sustainability 101 really, where it apart from running through our green venue guide and talking to some of the broader ideas we've got, we also had 6 on-site energy audits conducted by ChargeWorks. Uh, and that was a fantastic opportunity for people there to just walk through the venues and see how they're doing better, what small to medium to even large changes they could execute that would reduce their energy consumption. And a lot of those learnings are actually embedded in our report that I'm going to go into in great detail in a sec. Um, the third thing that we did as part of the Green Venue program was develop a certification program. And that was off the back of some work we'd done actually earlier in 2022, 23 with venues in Victoria and New South Wales that had been a part of a green action program. And through that training, they'd really discovered some fantastic things they can do, and they wanted to celebrate those achievements. And we thought they were asking us, how can we be publicly acknowledged for the work we're doing? Is there a way that we can talk about it? And we were really keen to honour that, but we wanted to develop something really quite robust that would enable venues that hadn't worked specific directly with us through training to get a sense of their sustainability credentials and build in some ambition into the program. And what we've built now is a 90 question self-assessment survey that we independently audit. And it covers a range of things I mentioned earlier: governance, operations, energy, waste, water, travel and transport, procurement, and First Nations. 9 venues participated in this pilot in New South Wales. I've listed them in this slide, but from the quite smaller independent run venues like La La La's through to a larger end of town like the International Convention Centre in Sydney. The scores range from 2 to 4, but all of them were certified green, which is a wonderful achievement. And as I said, with the ambition built in, our hope is that when they reapply for certification in years to come, they'll be able to move up in those star ratings. And then we took all of the learnings from this certification program, from the venue workshops, from the green guide that we put together, and we assembled them into what we've called the New South Wales Venue Sustainability Health Check Report. We were really excited to be able to do this. I should say that a database that we've built called AMADESI, which is an acronym that stands for Australian Music Industry Database of Environmental and Social Impact, enabled us to really dig into the data. It's something that it's like a carbon analytics platform, but it's actually beyond carbon. It helps us tell stories about various achievements from waste, energy, procurement. And the top 4 findings that came through the report, if I can get the cursor on them, were, well, number one, venues can save $1.5 million and over 70,000 tons of CO2 annually through energy upgrades. And I'll talk more to these findings in a minute, but we were really excited by the fact that cost savings were working in tandem with actual emission savings. Um, Another thing that we discovered was waste and gas emissions are often overlooked. A lot of venues are still on using gas in their cooking and other places. We found that venues want to take action but need greater support. And most venues are unaware or not prepared for changing regulatory landscape. We'll talk more about these top 4 findings right now. So the first one, this $1.5 million of savings that we estimate could be achieved within the New South Wales live music sector is as a result of this, what you're seeing here, the 10,000-ish dollars of savings per venue. And this is very much an average that we've achieved looking at these 9 venues. But the core areas that they could achieve cost reductions were in the contract optimization, which is a fancy way of saying finding a new retailer. The retail market for energy is a space where not a lot of people pay attention, but actually you can find yourself in a contract with a retailer that's charging well above another. So there are some really simple ways to re-engineer those contracts. Unless you're on some kind of larger wholesale level contract, certainly as a general retailer, you can find better deals out there. So that's literally just changing your retail contract. There were other savings to be made in refrigeration, for example, fixing leaky fridges with better seals. uh, HVAC, so the way you operate your heating, ventilation, air conditioning, it might be where it's located, and there might be some minor upgrades, or there might be operational changes, for example, like the thermostat level that you just changing it by 1 or 2 degrees can make a difference. We did look at solar PV for those venues that were able to put them up on their roof or that hadn't already. And yeah, and when you combined all of them, it was at a 10,000-ish dollar saving per venue. I'll note that the green power there is as a negative, and so the emission savings that can be achieved through uh, these various strategies are actually largely come from the green power. You can see in the emission saving pie chart. So 91% of the emission savings that this venue can achieve is by reinvesting some of the money that they got through the other savings into purchasing green power. And that basically means their energy consumption creates zero emissions. Green power is quite different from offsetting, and I'm not going to go into a large explainer of it today, but for those that aren't aware, you can purchase just through any retailer green power, which is certified renewable energy. And it's a signal to the grid that you need, that you're requesting renewable energy, and the grid needs to provide it. So it's a really fantastic signal to send. I think it's worth pointing out though that over time, these are year-on-year savings, and the year-on-year savings are likely to increase because energy costs are heading in one direction only, and that's up. So as energy costs go up, venues are likely to see greater year-on-year savings, whereas green power costs will hopefully over time go back to zero. And that's because most states and Australia more broadly have ambition or built into legislation where they're hoping to achieve net zero emissions. And the grid is moving quite rapidly towards renewable energy. So there will come a time at which we don't need to purchase green power because our entire grid is powered by renewable energy, in which case a venue can realize these full savings. And that's really exciting for us. And, with venues doing it tough, I think it might not seem like a lot of money, but if that 10,000-ish dollar savings can be made year on year, it can be reinvested into other initiatives and or pocketed to help with some of the other challenges like insurance premiums going up. I will say there is some upfront costs needed for this. Contract optimization costs nothing. It's literally moving from one retailer to another. Whereas, solar PV, for example, is probably the largest investment required, but the return on investment for solar panels is now sort of in the 3-year mark. So while there might be some upfront costs, we very much think it's worth it, and the venues will be seeing real savings, real cash in the bank after at best 3 years. Sorry, at worst 3 years. Um, some of the other findings that we found were, as I said, regarding waste and gas emissions. So 26% of the venues, the emissions were coming from waste and gas. So it's nowhere near the electricity emissions. And I should say that what you're looking at in this pie chart isn't the full gamut of emissions that can be created in a venue. Like we didn't look at things like procurement. So uh, there's a lot of what people call scope 3 or emissions generated by other activities like yeah, the beer that you might serve on your tap, the transport of that beer to and from your venue. That is not applicable in this situation. We're just looking at the energy consumed by the venue and the waste and the gas emissions directly. But even within that little, we get a fair bit of insight. And we also noticed that over half of the venues still cook with gas. Only 22% of them are food serving. Sorry, only 22% of the food serving venues are using food and organic bins. So there's real scope there for improvement. The third finding was in regards to venues wanting to take action but needing greater support. So you can see here that venue operators want to improve their environmental impact. That was across the board. All the venues we worked with were really excited to be involved in this program. and we're anxious to find more strategies to do better. Certainly ones that didn't cost them an arm and a leg, but they were willing to invest time and money into it. The thing is, they had a real lack of access to resources, knowledge, and time, and that was prohibiting the uptake. Government grants do exist, and I've got a little snippet there of the Sound New South Wales Venue Upgrade Grants Program, which is a fantastic example of government support. But more is needed. More is needed also in helping venues understand what grants they're eligible for, because a lot of the grants don't actually come through the music channel. A lot of them are environmental based grants. That's a role we're delighted to play, but I think, yeah, it's certainly something that needs to be done. Um, Another example of where venues might have the appetite for change but need support is in collective action. So we looked at this little case study here where we've got the drinkware in across the venues that we in our report. 78% of them were using reusable drinkware. 33% were using some kind of plastic drinkware. And that's because when they reached peak periods, uh, and they basically had to cater to a number of patrons beyond their norm, they pushed into the to practice like single-use plastic or compostable cups or even paper and cardboard. Uh, and if they had access to some municipal-wide library of sorts that they could tap into, they wouldn't necessarily need to bring in these single-use vessels at that time. Um, and I think that's a really important thing to understand is that citywide reusable systems are growing in popularity around the world. Wellington Council has recently introduced one in New Zealand, and I think one of the service providers we recommend, Better Cup, has been instrumental in getting that off the ground. And I think there's real scope for more of this happening, citywide reusable systems, and it would really help venues do better. But they need support. That's not something a venue can go out alone. Uh, and the fourth finding that we thought was really interesting was most venues are unaware and unprepared for changing regulatory landscape. So there are a raft of regulations and legislation coming in from various levels of government. Certainly nationally, we've got mandatory climate reporting that's coming in, or it's already come in, and it's being scaled to the size of businesses. So at this stage, it's really affecting uh, the big end of town, the large multinational corporates that have huge numbers of staff and big turnover. But over time, it's going to scale to for smaller entities to have to report. And even if a venue is never one that has to report under this mandatory climate legislation, they may well be affected through a downstream kind of effect whereby let's just say a large touring company has to report on their emissions, and then they ask venues that they work with to give them the data they need to fulfill their reporting obligations. From what we saw, none of the venues knew that that was coming or that that might be something that's going to be asked of them. Similarly, they weren't necessarily across the various single-use plastic bans that are coming into play. That's usually at a state level, and there is differences from state to state. There are waste diversion targets that are at a state and sometimes municipal level. There are food and organic waste disposals. There is other emission reduction targets at a state and municipal level. So there are a lot of ways in which venues might be affected by the regulatory landscape changing. None of them were really aware of them. And the wonderful thing about the certification is it's actually a stepping stone to get people thinking about this stuff well ahead of a situation where they're being asked to report on it. There are a bunch of other findings in the report. I've chucked up a couple of these screenshots just so you can see how we've put it together. Well, we've shown what's working well, what needs room for improvement, and given some specific analysis on transport and waste there. So well worth looking into the 30-page report, and yeah, finding what might be of specific interest to you if you're a venue that are looking at this, or if you're in the government landscape and thinking about ways you can enable venues to move in this direction. The other insight that we really fascinated by was that many of these findings translate to other arts and cultural venues. So I know we've got some people from local government on this call, and a lot of venues are multi-purpose. They don't necessarily just service the music world. They might have music on weekends, but they might have theatre, they might have dance. They could double as all sorts of things for the community. And really, for a large part, we're talking about built environment. We're talking about bricks and mortar and a place that can perform better, particularly with energy and waste. And then there might be some specific stuff regarding procurement if it's tailored to something that has a liquor license or something that doesn't. But for the most part, the learnings are really transferable. So we're going to be working with our partners. We're a part of a consortium called Creative Climate that's funded by Creative Australia, and we're actually at this moment running an expression of interest round for venues that are not music venues. So, uh, yeah, if they're not specifically, I should say, if it's fine if there's a bit of music in there, but if you're specifically a music venue, this pilot isn't for you. But if you are, yeah, at a venue of some other kind and you're keen on being part of this pilot to actually certify your venue green, then we encourage you to reach out and apply. All the information is on Creative Climate's website, which is creativeclimate.org.au. Um, and finally, I should say that because we've done this pilot and run these training programs in New South Wales, we're delighted to be extending the certification to the entire state. So anyone in that state that's interested in certifying their venue can let us know. There's an expressions of interest open on our website. You can just email us directly if you want to have any chats about things. And assessment's going to begin from October this year. The venues will be listed on a publicly accessible green venue directory, and our aspiration is very much to expand this nationally, but I think we need to have a few more conversations with other state governments to ensure that there's adequate training as we roll this out. Um, these are a couple links to download the report and to learn about the certification. I'll leave them up for a little bit, but I think this is an opportunity now for if anyone would like to ask any questions. We've got, I believe, Emma Bosworth I can't see the list in front of me, but Emma is our National Programs Manager. She was instrumental to getting this program off the ground. We've also got Georgia Cook, who is one of the lead authors on this report. So yeah, please do hit us up with any questions. You can shoot them in the chat, or you can raise your hand through the Zoom function and we will go to you. I'm going to now, I think you've had enough time to scan those QR codes, so I'm going to just end this slide. How do I do that? Bear with me for a sec. There we go. So over to you. Are there any questions? Well, thanks for sharing the report, Bridget. I appreciate it. I must have answered everything flawlessly, or it's that stunned mullet kind of situation where everyone's waiting for the other person to put their hands up. I've got Sam from Better Cup saying, if anyone wants a copy of the City of Wellington reuse initiative, feel good, send me a message and I'll get it over to you. Sorry, case study. Daniela, is this a pilot program? So the certification was run as a pilot program initially. Like what the report that I'm giving you is built off the back of a pilot program, which was funded by Sound New South Wales. But we feel really confident having delivered it to the 9 venues and having had the support of a couple really iconic, fantastic Melbourne venues, the Corner Group, Corner Hotel, and folks from the forum who helped make sure the certification process was really robust. We feel confident that it's something that can be scaled and taken to other states, and hopefully at a certain point become a standard that everyone can look out for. One thing I probably didn't mention is that we work closely with the whole sector, but particularly musicians. And for, I would say, at least the last 5 years, artists have been asking us, is there a way we can tour more sustainably? Can you help us identify venues that we should be booking our shows at? and we haven't to this point, we hadn't had a program in place. So we would, mention a few venues that have participated in our training programs, but I think what they were looking for was something more comprehensive. That was a full listing of venues around the country, and that's where we'd like to get to. We're also really hopeful to get all these venues onto the regional touring map. So uh, there's a fantastic regional touring network map for New South Wales already, and I believe that those maps are going to be expanded nationally as well. So this is a place that artists are already on agents, labels are already going to see how venues are performing, whether they've looked at accessibility, for example. So hopefully over time we'll see this this sustainability data introduced as well. You'll be able to see whether a venue has backline, whether they're certified green. Uh, when do the I'm just going to move through these questions. When do the EOIs close for green venue certification again? Sorry. If you're in New South Wales, then the EOIs are open and we're going to start looking at them properly in October. So we're just giving ourselves a little window to properly report back to the government that paid for the first round of certifications. Uh, I think my understanding, correct me, Emma, if I'm wrong, that the EOIs are open full stop. Does that sound right?
Yes, that's totally correct. So we're taking EOIs now. We're making some adjustments to the framework based on our pilot, and we'll be ready to start sending out those assessments in October. But there's no reason why we would close it off at any time. It'll just be an open EOI process for people to apply at any point for New South Wales.
Wonderful. And Luke's asked, how long does the certification take to apply for, provide information, receive your ranking?
So we asked a few of the pilot venues how long it took them, and the average range was about 1.5 to 2 hours. We a lot of the questions are yes, no questions and then short answer responses, but then we do also ask for things like a year of your waste and electricity and gas bills, so we can sort of start comparing how you're travelling by the size of the venue and that sort of thing. So I think 1.5 to 2 hours is probably right for most venues, depending how good you keep your records.
Wonderful. Um, we've got a question, another one from Daniela saying, is this would big sport events, thinking of MCG, Flemington Racecourse? Um, what do you reckon about that one?
Yeah, so
A big smile.
ICC's capacity, so the International Convention Centre, they were the biggest venue and the highest scoring venue across the pilot, and their capacity is 11,500. I mean, I think the question framework is relative to any venue, in my opinion. So most certainly we would be open to reviewing it. Um, and the pricing is scaled on their capacity. So um, yeah, I'd be definitely open to doing that, the MCG or the racecourse.
Wonderful. Last question I've got there from Zachariah Sullivan is, how long is the certification valid for?
It's a 12-month score. So if you don't renew your question, like if you don't redo your questionnaires in 12 months after the first one, we kind of take your score off. So the hope is that after you've done it once, you have a bunch of learnings and we give you some recommendations for improvement, and hopefully your score will just keep going up. The idea also is if you do renew it, there'll be a small discount because we're not doing extra onboarding with you. Your details are already there. So there's a bit of encouragement to continue doing it.
Thanks, Em. Wonderful. I feel like we've exhausted the question list. Um, Look, it's an exciting program. We were just talking on the radio in WA, and there is appetite I can see across the country. We just need to move in a way that we feel is totally sustainable, that we can support with training, that we have the capacity to deal with all the applications as it scales. But I do think there's venues doing good things around the country. There's also a lot of learnings that we can share to lift the bar generally. And we're really hopeful there's significant government investment because Governments have these, like I mentioned earlier, this ambition to see emissions reductions happen. They want to see waste progress in waste diversion from landfill. And even the container deposit scheme that's been introduced across most of the states now is something that some venues have fully embraced and others aren't even aware that it's happening. So there's big gaps here, and if government were to support this, I think we could see real quick uptake from venues and some significant progress over the next year or two. Anyway, thank you so much, everyone, for your time. Oh, sorry. What was the cost for the certification? And is the certification and review supported by New South Wales? The certification review is not supported by New South Wales. So the pilot program was, and they've enabled us really to get the framework up and running. It's quite a process, to develop a self-reporting framework that is something that we can audit and feel really robust and captures the data we need to feel confident to give people a star rating. So they supported that, and that's wonderful. But no, from now on, the certification and reviews is run by our organisation. And the cost for certification, as Em said, it's scaled by the size of the venue. And I think the easiest for us to just, if you get in touch with us and you email us, we can send you out the list of pricing that's tiered by venue capacity. I think that's probably the best way to do it.
Yeah. Perfect.
Thanks, Zachariah, and thanks everyone that's got a jump. It was really wonderful to share this with you. And if any future questions, just sing out. It's very easy to find us. You can go to the contact form on our website.